On Stoicism Breath, let's begin with a truth most people never stop to consider. There is a form of wealth you have been spending every single day, often without thinking, and once it is gone, you can never fully get it back. It is not money. It is not time alone. It is your attention. Your attention is the invisible currency of your life. And yet, so many people hand it away to criticism, to conflict, to people who drain them, and to situations that never deserve that kind of power in the first place. The moment you give your attention to every insult, every provocation, every unnecessary argument, you are allowing the outside world to decide what happens inside you. And that is how people slowly lose control of their peace without even realizing it. Think about how often this happens in everyday life. Someone says something unfair. A stranger makes a rude comment. A coworker questions your value. A family member pushes an old emotional button. Instantly, something rises inside you. You want to answer. You want to defend yourself. You want to prove your point, correct the lie, restore your dignity, and show them they cannot treat you that way. But pause for a second and ask yourself a deeper question. Why do their words have so much power? Is it really because of what they said, or is it because of the meaning you attach to it? Most of the time, it is not the event itself that shakes us. It is the story we create around it. We tell ourselves that if we do not respond, we look weak. If we do not fight back, we lose respect. If we stay silent, we surrender control. But Stoicism teaches the opposite. The truth is, the moment you react without discipline, you have already surrendered your control. You have handed your inner world over to the situation. That is why real strength does not begin when you overpower another person. It begins when you can govern yourself. Stoicism reminds us that we cannot control the behavior, opinions, or words of other people, but we can always control our response. That is where your true power lies. In the middle of tension, when your emotions are pushing you to strike back, there is something deeply powerful about staying steady. There is strength in choosing silence over impulsive reaction. There is wisdom in choosing calm over chaos. And most people miss this because they have been trained to think that loudness is power, and immediate reaction is confidence. But often, the strongest person in the room is the one who refuses to let a foolish moment steal their peace. If you look back on your own life, you will probably find many moments when reacting solved nothing. Maybe it was a petty argument that ruined your mood for hours. Maybe it was a criticism that lived in your head far longer than it deserved. Maybe it was a false accusation that made you feel desperate to explain yourself, only to leave you more exhausted than before. And if you are honest, how often did reacting improve the situation? How often did it truly bring peace? In many cases, it only added more heat to the fire. Reaction feeds drama. Reaction keeps conflict alive. Reaction pulls you into emotional storms that do not deserve a place in your life. But when you choose not to react to every little thing, something changes. The cycle breaks. You stop feeding the chaos. You stop becoming part of it. And in that moment, you begin to reclaim your emotional freedom. Now, this does not mean becoming passive, weak, or indifferent. It does not mean letting people disrespect you endlessly, or pretending harmful things do not matter. That is not wisdom. That is avoidance. The deeper lesson is discernment. It is learning which battles are truly worth your energy, and which ones are simply distractions wearing the disguise of importance. Not every insult deserves a reply. Not every challenge deserves your attention. Not every confrontation deserves a place in your mind. One of the greatest skills you can build in life is the ability to step back and ask, is this worth my peace? Is this worth my focus? Is this worth the emotional price I am about to pay? Because whatever you allow to occupy your mind will shape the quality of your life. Imagine how different your days would feel if you practiced that consistently. Imagine being provoked and choosing silence, not because you are empty, but because you are in control. Imagine hearing criticism and not instantly letting it define your mood. Imagine refusing to let one careless comment poison an entire day. That is not weakness. That is maturity. That is emotional discipline. And that is the kind of quiet strength people feel even before you speak. The people who carry real presence are rarely the ones reacting to every little thing. They are grounded. They are steady. They know who they are, and because of that, they do not need to chase every argument to prove it. At the end of the day, your attention is shaping your life whether you notice it or not. What you give your mind to will eventually shape your emotions, your energy, your habits, and even your future. So the question is no longer whether the world will try to pull you in 100 directions. It will. The real question is whether you will allow it. On Stoicism Breath, this is the practice we return to again and again. Protect your attention, guard your peace, and remember that the moment you stop reacting to everything, you begin living with intention. And that is where freedom begins. On Stoicism Breath, there is a shift that changes everything once you truly understand it. Every time you give your attention to an insult, a criticism, or a piece of negativity, you are not just reacting, you are feeding it. You are giving it energy, giving it space, allowing it to grow inside your mind. But the moment you begin to withhold your attention from what does not serve you, something powerful starts to happen. You begin to build emotional resilience. You create a space, a buffer, between you and the chaos of the world. And in that space, you are no longer controlled. You are choosing. Think about the people you genuinely respect. Not the loudest voices in the room, not the ones constantly trying to prove something, but the ones who carry a quiet presence. The ones who don't react to every little thing. The ones who seem grounded, steady, almost unaffected by the noise around them. What makes them different? It's not that they don't experience challenges. It's that they don't allow every challenge to enter their inner world. They've learned something most people haven't. Where you place your attention determines the quality of your life. This is the essence of emotional detachment. And it's often misunderstood. It's not about being cold, distant, or disconnected from people. It's about awareness. It's about being intentional with your energy. Imagine walking through your day observing everything, but not absorbing everything. You hear criticism, but you don't let it define you. You notice tension, but you don't carry it with you. That's not weakness, that's control. That's discipline. That's strength. Stoicism teaches that true virtue isn't about winning every argument or proving you're right. It's about mastering yourself. Because what's the value of being right if you lose your peace in the process? What's the point of defending your ego if it costs you your clarity, your energy, and your focus? Real strength is the ability to stay centered when everything around you is trying to pull you off balance. And this is where strategic detachment comes in. It's not about running away from life's challenges. It's about facing them on your terms. From a place of stability, not reaction. From a place of clarity, not emotion. You begin to choose what deserves your energy, and what is simply a distraction disguised as importance. Because the truth is, the world will always test you. People will push your buttons. Situations will challenge your patience. But not everything deserves a response. When you practice the art of ignoring what doesn't matter, you stop being a puppet reacting to every external force. You become the one in control. You become the one deciding what enters your mind and what stays out. And that is where your real power begins. Not in controlling others, but in controlling yourself. But this kind of mastery doesn't happen overnight. It's a process. It starts with awareness. That small moment when you feel triggered, when your instinct is to react, and you pause. That pause is everything. That is where transformation begins. Over time, you begin to unlearn the habit of reacting automatically. You start choosing your responses instead of being driven by impulse. And slowly, your life begins to change. You become calmer, more focused, more intentional. You stop wasting energy on things that don't matter, and you start investing it in what truly does, your growth, your purpose, your peace of mind. As Marcus Aurelius said, the quality of your life depends on the quality of your thoughts. And your thoughts are shaped by what you choose to focus on. As you continue practicing this, something remarkable happens. The world doesn't become quieter, but it affects you less. The noise is still there, but it becomes background noise, not the soundtrack of your life. You stop reacting from a place of weakness and start responding from a place of strength. You begin to see people and situations more clearly, without the distortion of emotional overreaction. And then you realize something freeing. You don't have to catch everything the world throws at you. Not every comment needs a reply. Not every situation needs your involvement. Not every person deserves access to your energy. And the moment you truly understand that, you break free from a cycle that drains most people for their entire lives. Because here's the truth, many people rely on your reactions. They thrive on them. Whether it's drama, criticism, or manipulation, they continue because they've learned you will respond. Your reaction is their reward. But when you stop giving that reward, the dynamic changes. The cycle breaks. And you reclaim something that was always yours. Control over your mind, your energy, and your life. On Stoicism Breath, something powerful begins to happen the moment you stop giving people the reaction they expect from you. When you no longer feed their need for attention, their need for control, or their need to provoke, you quietly break a cycle that may have been controlling you for years. And the more you practice this, the more you start to see a truth that can be uncomfortable at first. You are giving away far more power than you ever realized. Every reaction, every argument, every attempt to explain yourself was slowly training others how to control your emotional state. But the moment you withdraw from that pattern, you send a message without saying a single word. You do not control me anymore. And in that moment, something shifts inside you. There is a sense of relief, a sense of space, a sense of calm that begins to return. By choosing silence, by choosing not to react, you are no longer a prisoner of other people's moods, opinions, or careless words. You are no longer chasing validation or defending your worth at every turn. Instead, you begin to reconnect with something deeper, yourself. And that's where real freedom starts. Because the truth is, silence has been misunderstood for far too long. Many people see it as weakness, as avoidance, as something passive. But in reality, silence, when chosen consciously, is one of the most powerful tools you have. Think about it. Most people expect you to respond. They expect you to argue back, justify yourself, explain your position, or prove that you're right. That's the pattern they're used to. That's the game they know how to play. But when you refuse to participate, when you choose not to engage, the entire dynamic changes. Suddenly, they don't know how to respond. The script they were following no longer works. And that uncertainty gives you an advantage, not because you're trying to win against them, but because you are no longer playing the same game. And this isn't about avoiding conflict. It's about redefining how you engage with it. Choosing silence in the right moment is not running away. It's standing your ground in a different way. It's saying, without words, that you don't need to prove yourself to anyone. You don't need to fight every battle. You don't need to react to every trigger. And as you continue practicing this, you start to notice something fascinating. People begin to react differently to you. They become confused when you don't respond the way they expected. They may even feel uncomfortable, because the control they once had over your reactions is no longer there. Over time, their attempts to provoke you begin to lose their power. Why? Because you're no longer reinforcing their behavior. Without your reaction, their words have nowhere to land. Their strategies stop working. And eventually, they realize they cannot manipulate you the way they used to. But here's where the real transformation happens. This practice isn't just changing how others see you, it's changing how you see yourself. Every time you resist the urge to react, you are proving something important to yourself. You are showing yourself that your peace matters more than any external drama, that your energy is too valuable to be wasted on meaningless conflict, that you are capable of self-control, even when your emotions are pushing you in the opposite direction. This is emotional mastery. And the more you practice it, the more natural it becomes. You begin to notice that you're no longer drawn into situations that once drained you. You stop giving your energy to people who don't respect you. You stop investing time in arguments that lead nowhere. Instead, you start reclaiming something that most people lose without noticing: your time, your focus, and your energy. And the beauty of this practice is its simplicity. It doesn't require you to say the perfect thing. It doesn't require you to outsmart anyone. It doesn't require confrontation. It simply requires you to not engage with what does not deserve your attention. From a Stoic perspective, your mind is your most valuable possession. It shapes your reality, your emotions, your decisions, and your entire life. And no one should have the power to control it unless you allow them to. The moment you stop reacting impulsively, you take that control back. But this goes even deeper than how you interact with others. It begins to transform how you relate to yourself. So many people look outward for validation because they haven't learned to trust their own inner voice. They let their emotional state rise and fall based on how others treat them or what others think about them. But when you begin to withdraw your attention from that external noise, you naturally start turning inward. You begin to rely on yourself. You begin to build self-trust. And that's where real confidence comes from, not from approval, but from alignment with your own values. The Stoics understood this deeply. A peaceful and meaningful life isn't built on being liked by everyone or winning every argument. It's built on living in alignment with what you know is right for you. And when you detach from the constant need for validation, you strengthen your internal foundation. You begin to define your worth not by opinions, but by principles. Not by reactions, but by self-awareness. You no longer feel the need to prove yourself at every opportunity. You no longer feel pressured to respond to every challenge. Instead, you carry a quiet certainty within you. And with that certainty comes discipline. Because every time you choose not to react, you are training yourself to be stronger, more stable, more grounded. This is not just about ignoring insults or avoiding petty conflict. This is about building a version of yourself that cannot be shaken easily. A version of yourself that remains steady even when the world is chaotic. A version of yourself that knows what truly matters and refuses to waste energy on what doesn't. As Seneca once said, it is not that life is short, but that we waste so much of it. And one of the biggest ways we waste it is by reacting to things that never deserved our attention in the first place. When you begin to truly understand this, your priorities shift. You start protecting your energy the same way you would protect something valuable. You stop letting small irritations control your emotional state. And instead, you begin to focus on what actually moves your life forward, your growth, your purpose, your peace. On Stoicism Breath, there comes a turning point where you begin to realize that not everything in life deserves your attention, and more importantly, not everything deserves your reaction. The moment you start directing your focus toward what actually nourishes you, what helps you grow, something quietly powerful begins to unfold. Every time you resist the urge to react, you are not losing anything. You are reclaiming a part of yourself that was slowly being given away. And over time, something remarkable happens. The need to react starts to fade. The opinions of others begin to lose their weight. And in that space, you gain something far more valuable: freedom. Because when you stop caring so much about what everyone thinks, you finally have the energy to care about what truly matters: your path, your purpose, your peace. You begin to master your emotions instead of being controlled by them. And that mastery, that quiet control, is where real strength is born. Now here's something important to understand. Human beings are wired to seek attention. It's natural. We all want to feel seen, heard, and valued in some way. But not everyone seeks it in a healthy way. Some people, especially those who are insecure, manipulative, or driven by drama, learn to get attention by provoking others. They create tension, stir conflict, and push emotional buttons because they know it gets a reaction. And every time you respond, you unknowingly validate that behavior. You teach them that they have the power to affect you. But what if you stopped? What if, instead of reacting, you began to see their behavior for what it really is, noise? Just like a distant dog barking in the background, it exists, but it doesn't deserve your energy. It doesn't deserve your focus. And the moment you truly adopt that perspective, everything changes. Because when you stop responding, when you stop engaging in their drama, their influence over you begins to disappear. The power they once had fades, not because they changed, but because you did. And this is not about becoming passive or ignoring people entirely. It's about shifting your mindset. It's about understanding that just because something happens doesn't mean it has to affect you. You are not obligated to react to every word, every action, every situation. When you stop reacting, you take back control of your energy. You stop feeding into chaos. And in doing so, you create space. Space for clarity, space for calm, space for peace. Imagine a moment like this. Someone insults you, tries to pull you into an argument, maybe even plays a manipulative game. In the past, you might have felt that instant surge of emotion, the need to respond, to defend, to prove your point. But now, you do something different. You pause. You observe. You let their words pass through your awareness without holding on to them. You don't absorb them. You don't carry them. You simply let them go. That is control. Because the truth is, toxic people thrive on emotional reactions. They create a tug-of-war, pulling on your emotions, trying to drag you into their world. And the more you pull back, the more energy you give them. But what happens when you stop pulling altogether? What happens when you simply let go of the rope? They're left pulling alone. And you are free. Free from the weight of their expectations. Free from the pressure to respond. Free from the cycle of reaction and regret. And in that freedom, you begin to see things more clearly. You begin to understand that not every battle needs to be fought. Not every opinion matters. Not every voice deserves a place in your mind. This is where your life begins to shift in a meaningful way. Because when you stop wasting energy on what drains you, you suddenly have more energy for what builds you. Your focus sharpens. Your priorities become clearer. You start investing your time and attention into things that actually move your life forward, your health, your growth, your purpose, your relationships that truly matter. And this is the deeper lesson behind the art of ignoring. It's not just about avoiding toxic people. It's about developing self-control. It's about learning how to remain steady in a world that constantly tries to shake you. It's about becoming the calm in the middle of the storm. Because life will always present challenges. There will always be noise, distractions, and people who try to pull you in different directions. But when you learn to stay grounded, when you learn to choose your responses instead of reacting automatically, you create something powerful within yourself. A sense of order, a sense of direction, a sense of inner peace. And from that place, you no longer live at the mercy of the world around you. You begin to live on your own terms. On Stoicism Breath, this is where everything becomes practical. The idea of not engaging, of protecting your attention, is powerful, but its true value shows up in the small, everyday moments. Not in big life-changing events, but in the quiet, almost invisible situations that happen throughout your day. A driver cuts you off in traffic. Someone throws a passive-aggressive comment your way. A coworker tries to pull you into unnecessary tension. In those moments, the old habit is instant reaction. But this is where the new path begins. Instead of reacting, you pause. You take a breath. And in that brief space, you make a different choice. You choose to stay in control. You choose to protect your peace instead of defending your ego. You redirect your attention back to what actually matters, your goals, your focus, your state of mind. And at first, it might feel unnatural. It might feel like you're holding back. But over time, with repetition, this becomes your new default. What once required effort becomes automatic. You stop giving your attention to things that don't deserve it, and without even realizing it, your life becomes quieter, clearer, and more intentional. And something else begins to shift. You stop feeding the constant cycle of drama that so many people are trapped in. You stop reacting to everything, explaining everything, justifying everything. And instead, you begin to live a life that feels like it's actually yours. Not controlled by reactions, not driven by external noise, but guided by your own decisions. This isn't about manipulation. It's not about playing games or trying to make people chase you. It's much simpler than that. It's about understanding a basic truth of human nature. People respect what is rare. When something is always available, always accessible, always given freely without boundaries, it loses its perceived value. But when something is limited, intentional, and protected, it becomes meaningful. Think about it. A rare gem, a limited edition item, an exclusive experience. These things carry value because they are not easy to access. And the same principle applies to your attention. When you start being more selective with where you place your time and energy, you send a message without saying a word. You communicate that your focus is valuable, that your presence is not something to be taken for granted. Imagine seeing yourself as something rare. Not in an arrogant way, but in a grounded, self-respecting way. Not everyone deserves access to your energy. Not everyone deserves your time, your focus, your emotional investment. And that doesn't mean you become distant or cold. It means you become intentional. You begin to choose. You stop giving your attention to those who don't respect it, and you start investing it in people and experiences that truly add value to your life. This is where your identity begins to shift. Because your time and your attention are not just resources, they are reflections of who you are. As Carl Jung suggested, you are what you do, not what you say you'll do. And where you consistently place your attention tells a story about what you value. If you give it away to everything and everyone, it signals that it has little worth. But when you guard it, when you choose it carefully, you show the world, and yourself, that it matters. At the core of this practice is respect. Not just respect from others, but respect for yourself. Respect for your time. Respect for your mental and emotional energy. It's understanding that you are not obligated to respond to every demand placed on you. You don't owe your attention to someone simply because they want it. Your focus is something that should be earned, not assumed. And when you begin to live this way, something powerful happens. You move through life with a different kind of presence. A calm, steady confidence. You are no longer pulled in every direction by every opinion, every situation, every piece of noise. You remain centered. You remain grounded. And people notice. They feel that you are not easily influenced, not easily shaken. And that naturally creates respect. But perhaps the most important transformation is internal. Because as you change how you handle your attention, you also change how you see yourself. You stop seeing yourself as someone who has to react, who has to respond, who has to prove something. And instead, you begin to see yourself as someone who chooses. Someone who decides. Someone who is in control. And that shift doesn't just change your relationships. It changes your entire experience of life. On Stoicism Breath, this is where the transformation becomes deeply personal. You begin to see yourself differently. No longer as someone constantly pulled in every direction by other people's needs, expectations, and demands, but as someone who chooses. Someone who decides. You stop measuring your worth by how available you are, by how much you give, or by how often you show up for everyone else. And instead, you begin to understand something that changes everything. Your value is not based on how much you give, but on how intentionally you give, and to whom. For so long, many people live with the belief that they have to be everything for everyone. The one who always answers, always helps, always fixes, always sacrifices. But over time, that pattern becomes exhausting. It drains your energy, clouds your focus, and slowly disconnects you from your own life. And the moment you begin to step back, even slightly, you start to see the truth. You don't have to be the solution to every problem. You don't have to be everyone's first call. You don't have to earn your place in the world by constantly giving yourself away. Because when you begin to withhold your attention from what doesn't align with your values, you create space. And that space is powerful. It gives you room to grow, room to think, room to focus on the parts of your life that actually matter, your personal development, your health, your meaningful relationships, your peace of mind. You finally have the time and energy to invest in a life that reflects who you truly are, not who others expect you to be. But this shift is not instant. It takes time. Especially if you spent years being the person who is always there, always available, always responding. At first, it can feel uncomfortable. You may feel guilty. You may question yourself. You may wonder if you're doing something wrong. But with consistency, something begins to change. You start noticing that you feel less drained, less overwhelmed, less reactive. And more importantly, you begin to feel in control. And then comes one of the most eye-opening realizations. You see just how much of your emotional energy was being spent on things and people that never deserved it in the first place. Conversations that led nowhere. Situations that only brought stress. Relationships that took far more than they gave. And with that awareness comes something incredibly powerful: freedom. Freedom from the constant pressure to react. Freedom from the need to prove yourself. Freedom from trying to be everything for everyone. And in that freedom, you discover a deeper kind of peace. Not the kind that depends on everything going your way, but the kind that comes from knowing you are in control of where your energy goes. This is where your priorities begin to sharpen. You start choosing what truly deserves your attention. You begin to invest your energy in things that bring growth, meaning, and balance. And as you do that, something else happens. You start gaining respect. Not just from others, but from yourself. Because every time you choose to protect your energy, you reinforce the belief that your time, your focus, and your well-being matter. And slowly, you begin living life on your own terms. No longer reacting to every demand. No longer pulled into every situation. You understand that your attention is yours to give, and just as importantly, yours to withhold. And in that choice, you reclaim your power. Now, there's an important question that naturally comes up. What about the people who genuinely need you? What about those who are trying to connect, to reach out, to build something real? It's a valid concern. Because the goal here is not to become distant or emotionally unavailable. The goal is clarity. The goal is discernment. True connection, from a Stoic perspective, is not about constantly giving your energy to others, especially when that energy is not respected or returned. It's about balance. It's about mutual respect. When you give endlessly to those who only take, you slowly diminish your own value. But when you choose to be intentional, when you choose to protect your energy, you're not rejecting others, you're respecting yourself. And here's where the dynamic truly shifts. When you stop reacting to someone's attempts to provoke you, something subtle but powerful happens. You remove the reward they were seeking. Without your reaction, there is nothing to feed their behavior. And in that silence, they are left with themselves. Left to reflect. Left to confront their own actions without the distraction of your emotional response. This is especially true for those who thrive on drama or manipulation. They rely on reactions. They rely on emotional responses to validate their behavior. But when you step out of that cycle, when you refuse to participate, their influence weakens. And often, For the first time, they are forced to look inward. This doesn't mean you avoid all difficult conversations or disconnect from people entirely. It means you become aware. You begin to recognize when someone is pulling you into a space that doesn't serve your peace. And instead of reacting automatically, you create a boundary. A quiet, steady boundary that protects your emotional energy. Because not everyone who seeks your attention comes with good intentions. Not everyone who reaches out is offering respect, honesty, or balance. And once you understand that, you stop letting other people's behavior control your mood. You stop reacting out of habit. And instead, you choose consciously where your attention goes. And when you choose to withdraw your attention from those who drain you, you're not punishing them. You're not rejecting them. You are simply redirecting your energy to where it can grow. To relationships that uplift you. To experiences that nourish you. To a life that feels aligned with who you truly are. And as you continue this practice, something interesting happens. The people who once took your energy for granted begin to notice your absence. They feel the shift. They recognize that something has changed. And in that moment, the balance of power is no longer where it used to be. On Stoicism Breath, there is a level of strength that most people never fully reach, not because it is complicated, but because it requires something rare, discipline over your own reactions. This kind of resilience doesn't come from fighting back, arguing louder, or proving a point. It comes from a deeper understanding that your peace and your energy are yours to protect. And the moment you truly embrace that, something changes. When someone tries to provoke you and you remain unaffected, you become emotionally untouchable. You are no longer playing their game. You are no longer reacting on their terms. You become the one in control. This is what emotional mastery really looks like. It's not about responding to everything. It's not about engaging in every situation that demands your attention. It's about knowing when to stand firm, when to stay silent, and when to walk away. That kind of wisdom doesn't appear overnight. It's built through repetition, through awareness, through those small moments when you feel the urge to react and choose differently. And as you continue practicing, something begins to shift. You start seeing people more clearly. Not through the lens of emotion, but through clarity. Suddenly, not every comment feels like an attack. Not every criticism feels personal. Not every situation feels like it requires your response. You begin to recognize that much of what once disturbed you was never truly about you. It was noise, external, fleeting, and powerless unless you allowed it in. And when you stop giving people the emotional reaction they expect, something powerful happens. They are left with nothing to hold on to. No response to feed on. No energy to manipulate. And in that silence, they are forced to face themselves. But more importantly, in that silence, you begin to find something you may not have felt in a long time: peace. A steady, grounded sense of calm that doesn't depend on what others say or do. And the beauty of this practice is its simplicity. You don't need special tools. You don't need perfect timing. You don't need to say the right words. All it takes is a decision. A decision to stop reacting. A decision to stop feeding into the chaos. A decision to protect your inner world. And as you make that decision again and again, you begin to notice a transformation within yourself. You feel less drained by others. Less affected by negativity. Instead of constantly reacting, you begin to feel energized by your own choices. You realize that your emotional state is not something that just happens to you. It is something you influence, something you shape, something you control. This is not about shutting people out or becoming distant. It's about recognizing your worth. It's about understanding that your time, your energy, and your attention are valuable. And not everything deserves access to them. When you stop giving your attention to what doesn't matter, you naturally begin to give it to what does: your growth, your purpose, your well-being. And with that shift comes something even deeper. A sense of peace that doesn't rely on external validation. peace that isn't shaken by drama, peace that comes from knowing that you are in charge of where your energy goes. And as you continue on this path, you begin to build a life that reflects that control. A life that is no longer reactive, but intentional. But the true mastery of this practice doesn't stop with other people. It goes deeper, into your own mind. Because the same way external noise tries to pull your attention, so does your internal dialogue. And if you're honest, how often do you find yourself reacting to your own thoughts? The doubts, the fears, the insecurities that quietly repeat in your mind. That voice that tells you you're not good enough, that you failed, that others are judging you. These internal distractions can be just as powerful, sometimes even more, than anything happening around you. And when you give them your attention, when you believe them without question, you allow them to control your state of mind. You become trapped in the same cycle, only this time, it's happening inside you. The Stoics understood this deeply. Real strength is not just about controlling your response to the world. It's about controlling your response to your own thoughts. It's about knowing which thoughts deserve your attention, and which ones you can let pass without attachment. Imagine making a mistake. Something small, or maybe something that feels significant. What happens next? Does your mind replay it over and over? Does it amplify the situation, turning it into something bigger than it is? Or can you pause, observe the thought, and choose not to engage with it, because that choice, that moment of awareness, is where your freedom begins. On Stoicism Breath, there is one final layer of mastery that most people overlook, and it may be the most important of all. It's not about how you handle other people. It's not even about how you respond to the world around you. It's about how you respond to your own mind. Think about the last time you made a mistake. What happened next? Did you immediately start criticizing yourself? Did your mind replay the moment again and again, making it feel worse each time? Maybe you started worrying about what others thought, imagining their judgment, convincing yourself that their opinions somehow defined your worth. This pattern is more common than most people realize. And what's interesting is this is still a form of reactivity. It's just happening internally. Just like reacting to external drama drains your energy, reacting to your own negative thoughts does the same thing. It traps you. It keeps you stuck in a loop where you're not moving forward, only reliving the same emotions over and over again. And over time, that loop becomes exhausting. It steals your focus, your clarity, and your ability to grow. But what if you approached it differently? What if, instead of feeding every negative thought, you simply let it pass? What if you didn't fight it, didn't believe it, didn't attach meaning to it, just observed it and moved on? That simple shift is a form of emotional intelligence that changes everything. It's the ability to step back from your thoughts and recognize that not every thought deserves your attention. Because the truth is, your mind produces thousands of thoughts every day. Not all of them are useful. Not all of them are true. And not all of them deserve to shape your reality. The problem begins when you treat every thought as important, when you react to each one as if it defines who you are. But when you begin to observe your thoughts instead of becoming them, you create distance. And in that distance, you create control. At first, this isn't easy. It takes awareness. It takes practice. There will be moments when your mind pulls you back into old patterns, self-doubt, overthinking, imagining worst-case scenarios. But the more you practice letting those thoughts pass without reacting, the quieter your mind becomes. The noise doesn't disappear overnight, but it becomes less intense, less frequent, less controlling. And slowly, something powerful begins to take its place: clarity. You start to see things as they are, not as your fears or assumptions distort them. You begin to focus on what is real, what is important, and what is actually within your control. And in doing so, you stop wasting energy on imagined problems, on stories that exist only in your mind. Because so much of human suffering doesn't come from reality, it comes from interpretation. from the stories we tell ourselves, from the what-ifs that never happen, from the fear of things that haven't even occurred. And when you learn to step away from that mental noise, you free yourself from a burden you may not have even realized you were carrying. This is where true freedom begins. Not just freedom from external distractions, but freedom from the chaos within. The ability to choose your focus. The ability to decide which thoughts you engage with, and which ones you release. The ability to take control of your mental space. And as you continue to practice this, you begin to notice something almost unexpected. You realize just how much of your mental energy was being wasted on things that never deserved it. It's like cleaning out a cluttered room. At first, it feels overwhelming. But as you remove what no longer serves you, space begins to open up. Space for focus. Space for calm. Space for growth. And in that space, your life begins to change. You feel more at peace in your daily routine. Less affected by what others say. Less influenced by outside noise. More connected to your own path, your own values, your own direction. This is what the Stoics understood so well. A good life is not built by controlling everything around you. It's built by mastering what's within you. By focusing on what you can control and letting go of what you cannot. By choosing not to engage with distractions, whether they come from the world or from your own mind. And when you begin to live this way, your entire experience of life shifts. You become less reactive, more intentional, more grounded. You stop being pulled in every direction by every thought, every fear, every opinion. Instead, you move forward with purpose. You create space for growth, for creativity, for a deeper connection with yourself. And over time, you realize something that changes everything. You are no longer at the mercy of your thoughts, your emotions, or your circumstances. You are in control. And that control is the foundation of a life that is truly your own. On Stoicism Breath, this is the final evolution of the practice. The ability to remain fully present in your life without being consumed by it. Because the truth is, every single day, the world is competing for your attention. People, situations, notifications, opinions, expectations, they all demand your energy. And it's incredibly easy to fall into the habit of reacting to everything, of getting pulled into the noise, of letting the chaos of the outside world dictate what happens inside you. But imagine something different. Imagine walking through your day and noticing everything, yet not being controlled by any of it. Imagine hearing criticism without carrying it, facing stress without absorbing it, being present, aware, engaged, but not overwhelmed. That is the true power of ignoring. Not avoidance, not escape, but control. Because this practice is not about running away from life. It's about choosing how you engage with it. It's about deciding what truly deserves your energy, and what is simply a distraction. You begin to focus on what aligns with your purpose, your values, your direction, and you let everything else pass without attachment. And in doing so, you gain something that most people spend their entire lives chasing: freedom. A freedom that comes from no longer needing approval, no longer needing validation, no longer measuring your worth through the eyes of others. Instead, you become your own source of validation. You stop asking, "What do they think of me?" and start asking, "Am I aligned with who I want to be?" And that shift is powerful. Because when your worth comes from within, nothing outside of you can take it away. This is where personal strength is built. When you stop chasing approval, you gain the ability to pursue what actually matters to you. Your goals become clearer. Your decisions become stronger. You are no longer living by someone else's expectations. You are defining your own path, your own version of success, your own purpose. And as Carl Jung once suggested, the greatest privilege in life is becoming who you truly are. But that can't happen if your mind is constantly filled with noise that isn't yours. It can't happen if your attention is scattered across distractions that pull you away from yourself. It begins when you learn to ignore what doesn't serve you and turn inward, because the world will never stop testing you. There will always be people who try to pull you into their drama. There will always be situations that demand your reaction. There will always be distractions trying to shift your focus. But when you practice this discipline, you become anchored. You stop being pulled in every direction. You stand steady. You begin to move through life like a calm presence in the middle of chaos. Not because the chaos disappears, but because it no longer controls you. You understand that your mind is yours. Your attention is yours. Your energy is yours. And you guard it with intention. This is where real power lies. Not in controlling the world, but in controlling your response to it. Not in reacting to everything, but in choosing what matters. When you stop giving your power away to external noise, you reclaim something that was always yours, your inner stability. And this is not something that happens overnight. It takes practice. It takes discipline. It takes awareness. But once you begin, you start to notice a shift. You feel calmer, more focused, more in control. The things that once disturbed you begin to lose their grip. The world still moves, but it no longer moves you the same way. And this doesn't mean becoming distant or disconnected. It means becoming intentional. It means setting boundaries. It means choosing to invest your energy into your growth, your relationships that matter, your purpose, while letting go of what drains you. Because in the end, you cannot control what happens around you. But you can always control how you respond to it. And when you choose not to react to everything, you begin to live a different kind of life. A life that is not dictated by chaos, but guided by clarity. Imagine waking up each day with that level of control. Moving through your day without being pulled into unnecessary conflict. Without being distracted by noise that doesn't matter. Without feeling the need to respond to everything. That is not just peace. That is freedom. And that is a life that is truly your own. On Stoicism Breath, imagine what your life would look like if every day you moved with clarity, with purpose, and with full control over where your energy goes. Not reacting to every distraction, not getting pulled into every piece of noise, but intentionally directing your focus toward what actually helps you grow. That is the real power of ignoring. Not indifference. Not avoidance. But strength. The strength to decide what deserves your attention and what doesn't. Because when you learn to filter out the distractions, the negativity, and the constant noise of the world, something powerful opens up. You create space. Space to think clearly. Space to breathe. Space to focus on what truly matters. And in that space, your life begins to change. You stop living in reaction mode, constantly responding to whatever happens around you, and you start living with intention. You become proactive instead of reactive. You begin to design your days instead of being controlled by them. And this isn't just a concept. It's a skill you can apply everywhere. In your relationships, when dealing with difficult people. In your work, when managing your time and priorities. In your personal life, when facing stress, uncertainty, or challenges. The art of ignoring becomes a tool that protects your peace while keeping you aligned with your goals. It gives you the mental clarity to make better decisions, to stay focused, and to move forward without being constantly derailed. Over time, something even deeper begins to happen. You stop letting the chaos of the world dictate how you feel. You become the calm center in your own life. Situations may still be unpredictable. People may still act in ways you can't control. But you are no longer shaken by it. You begin to carry a quiet confidence, the kind that doesn't need to be proven, the kind that doesn't react to everything, the kind that simply knows. You no longer depend on external validation. You no longer feel the need to respond to every opinion, every challenge, every distraction. Instead, you move with certainty, knowing that your peace, your purpose, and your energy belong to you. And the more you practice this, the stronger you become. Not louder. Not more aggressive. just more grounded, more focused, more in control. This is what it means to navigate life with resilience, with grace, with direction. You begin to understand that true power doesn't come from controlling others or dominating situations. It comes from mastering yourself, from choosing your responses, from protecting your inner world. And when you truly master this, something remarkable happens. You reclaim what was always yours, your power, your peace, and your focus. You stop reacting to the noise around you, and you start living a life that is guided by your own values, your own decisions, your own strength, because the world will always try to pull you in different directions. There will always be noise. There will always be distractions. But the difference now is this: you choose where your energy goes. You choose what matters. You choose what you allow into your mind. So stay grounded. Stay focused. Protect your inner world like it's the most valuable thing you have, because it is. Continue investing in yourself, in your growth, in your purpose. And step by step, you'll build a life that feels calm, intentional, and truly your own. This is Stoicism Breath. Keep walking the path of peace, purpose, and quiet strength.